Hello, everyone. I'm Howard Weiss. There's a lot of questions out there about how do we address the shortage of technicians in the HVAC industry. The answer is if anyone really knew, there wouldn't be a shortage of technicians. Today, we're going to have one of the industry's top authors joining us to discuss 10 questions on how we might alleviate the problem. Eugene Silberstein, you may know him, he's an author with Cengage, ESCO, Goodhart Wilcox. Good morning, Eugene.
Morning, Howard.
Eugene, it's no secret there's a shortage. I want to talk today about some possible ideas that industry stakeholders can address. So I've got 10 questions for you. I'm going to
Awesome.
start off with an easy one. Why do you think there's a shortage of technicians in the HVAC industry?
I wish that was an easy question. The fact is that there's definitely a shortage of technicians in the HVACR industry. And I think one of the major reasons is that a lot of people don't understand what an HVACR professional is or what they do. For example, you see cars, you see trucks all over the place, all over the road, and people want to own cars. They want to fix cars. They want to learn how to work on them. So it's really cool to be an auto mechanic because everybody deals with cars. They see cars. They want to be part of the auto industry. With HVAC, where is our HVAC equipment? It's in our attics. It's in basements. It's hidden in walls. And if we do our jobs correctly, our industry is completely hidden. So I think the main reason that we have a shortage of technicians is that we don't really get the exposure that other industries get. And I think a lot of people don't even understand what HVACR people do. And we'll probably touch on it later on, but you could be a service tech, you could be an estimator, you could be a service manager, you could be a designer, you could work for a manufacturer, you can get out. It's a really neat industry where you get out and you see different things every day. You see different people. A lot of people don't like they don't like sitting in an office all day, looking at the same people, looking at the same computer screen. I mean, you could be a duct installer, you could be a system balancer. There are so many things that this industry has to offer, but we don't get the word out. Plus you can make a lot of money, you get benefits, you get uniforms, you get continuing ongoing training. So I don't know why there's a shortage, other
Well, you
than
just hit on something that's a big question.
well,
So you've obviously said there's not enough awareness, but we make good money. My problem is, are the starting salaries attractive enough? People don't look long term 5 years down the road. They're looking now.
right.
So do we really have starting salaries that are comparable? I'll just share something with you. I went by an In-N-Out burger and they were hiring people for 17 to 22 bucks an hour. And right next to me is a service truck hiring $8 to $10 an hour. Isn't that part of the problem?
You know how it is, but you asked about starting salaries, and the key word there is starting. And when you go out and you graduate from a program, you're not at the top of your industry. People getting retrained. Somebody's job might have gotten eliminated and they need to get retrained to learn a new skill. Well, people might not be happy with the starting pay, but what experience do you really have? And one thing that I always tell students that I was dealing with in my school is, okay, you might have been making $30 an hour where you were working, but now that job doesn't exist anymore. So I always would, kind of equate it to a car up against a brick wall. So the car is up against the brick wall and you're pushing the gas pedal and pushing the gas pedal. Well, you're still up against that brick wall, so there's not a whole lot for you to do. So sometimes you might have to put that car in reverse and back up a little bit so you can drive around that wall. So the starting salaries, you just hit it. I mean, those are starting salaries,
I guess
which
though my
are salaries
concern,
at where you
Eugene, is
start.
I get what you're saying. My problem is when I can make more money at Walmart pushing carts inside, I think that contractors on the residential side need to take a look. I think it's something we all need to be honest with. Starting salaries may be starting and there's a great potential, but don't we agree that starting salaries for someone who's gone to school, had to buy their own tools, should be equal to that of other entry level positions?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. But there's also in our industry, there's definitely a lot of room for mobility. If you're pushing carts at Walmart, you will be pushing carts at Walmart today, tomorrow, next month. Whereas in our industry, a lot of people start out getting jobs, working in the trades, working their way up from a helper to a technician to a manager to a service manager, and you have the possibility of even possibly opening up your own company some days. So yeah, for the most part, you are being paid based on your experience. But yeah, no, I would definitely love to see people get paid more. I'm a big fan of HVAC. I've been in
Well,
this
let's talk
industry for
long
over
term
20
for a
years.
second, though. Some people don't realize what kind of salaries can someone make long term, residential, commercial. And I realize it's different wherever you're at in the country, California versus, a small town.
Well, I have students that graduated from my program, and they're making 150, $175,000 a year. Now,
Okay.
granted, these are the people. I always tell my students, Howard, be the one with the answers. You mentioned pushing carts at Walmart. And if you're a cart pusher at Walmart, that's what you're going to be. In our industry, if you want to be a filter changer and that's what you aspire to be, you will be a filter changer. And you're not going to make $100,000 a year changing filters. So I always tell students when they're in the programs, be the one with the answers. Be that, make yourself indispensable. Be that person at your company who everybody goes to when they have questions. So yeah, you have people across the country that could easily be making, six-figure salaries. And, what's the goal? You want to be happy. You want to have a nice house. You want to drive a nice car. You want to wear nice clothes. You want to eat in a nice restaurant. And yeah, you can absolutely make a lot of money in this industry. And I think it's important that we get that word out that for the people who are willing to do the time, they will be rewarded handsomely for their work.
So I have a question. It seems to me there's a mismatch between what guidance counselors often tell students and the reality of the requirements of the industry. Um, and this is true of even going to a program advisory committee, meeting administrators, the requirements for math, reading level, chemistry, physics. Can you talk about what some of the real requirements are? Because it seems like that might be part of the problem of dissatisfaction is we're not recruiting the people with the right skills.
Yeah, you know what, Howard? That is super important because you mentioned the guidance counselor's perception, but it's not only the guidance counselor's perception, it's the public's perception of what an HVAC tech is. When you ask the average person, what do you think an HVAC technician does, they think of a low-paid, unskilled, uneducated grease monkey. Maybe they're covered in dirt with dirty hands, and they're the ones who track dirt throughout their house. And a lot of people don't think that you really need to be smart to be an HVAC technician. And the fact is, the well-performing HVAC techs, those are the ones that are highly skilled, and those are the really, really smart individuals. And a lot of people don't realize that HVAC people do plumbing, we do electrical, we do carpentry, we do welding, we do masonry. Pretty much all the building trades are rolled into the HVAC trade. And you mentioned STEM, you mentioned, science, technology, engineering, and math. And you mentioned administrators. Well, at the college I worked at in New York, we got a grant and we were building a new STEM center. And there was a big meeting about what programs would be moved into the STEM center. And HVAC was not on that list. And I asked my college president, we were at this meeting. Well, why isn't HVAC on the list of programs to be included in this new STEM center? And the response I got was, well, that's HVAC. That's not engineering. And I ran to my office and I got psychrometric charts, I got pressure enthalpy charts, and I brought a textbook back. And I said, this is what we do. We are the epitome of science, technology, engineering, and math. So it really is about opening people's eyes to what it is that HVAC people do.
Can we dive into that though? So let me ask you a couple questions. What is the level of math required of a basic entry level technician?
Well, you know what? A basic entry level person may not need a whole lot of math. And there are some jobs in the HVAC trade. I listed some earlier that don't require a great deal of math. But as you reach, our industry has become so technologically advanced. We are dealing with computer applications and interfaces. We need people in this industry who can work with their minds as well as their hands. But doing system design work, dealing with psychrometrics, airflow, dealing with the refrigeration cycle, there are a lot of calculations. Even somebody that, oh, well, you fabricate ductwork. Oh, you don't need to know math. But if you ever see what goes into fabricating ductwork, there's a lot of mathematical calculations. There are angle calculations. So there really is a lot more math involved in our industry than the average person might think.
Well, the reason I ask is because very often I see questions, is a sixth grade math level good? And the answer is always no. So the question is, what is good? And you hit on a point. Let's focus on being a service technician, residential, commercial, industrial. What type of math skills might they need?
Oh yeah, you know what? It could range from algebra, when you're calculating angles, you're dealing with geometry, you're dealing with trigonometry, you're dealing with three-space calculations. HVAC is a three-dimensional industry. It's not just addition, subtraction, multiplication. It really can get really involved. When we get into control strategies, we get into PID strategies, which are proportional integral derivative strategies. You're looking at calculus level calculations that are being made in the controls that we're using. So it really depends on what your responsibilities are in this industry. If you're a filter changer, you don't need a whole lot of math. But if you're going to be an estimator, you're going to be a system designer, if you're going to go out there meet with customers, and you need to calculate and you need to put together quotes for jobs, there's a lot of math involved. So it
But we're
really
also
depends on
talking
what you're
about chemistry and physics. So when we start talking about azeotropic, zeotropic, glide, I think most guidance counselors, eyes would go back and say, well, HVAC technicians don't need to know that. Isn't that part of the misconception?
It really is, because we do so much more than what people think we do. And again, this stems back to one of the initial things that I mentioned. We don't get the exposure that our industry needs, but I think that's our fault. We need to tell people, how great our industry is, what the opportunities are, what you can do in this industry. So if we give off the impression that HVAC is unskilled, that HVAC is just dirty grease monkey people doing menial work, changing parts, then that's the impression that people are going to have of us.
That's great. Well, this leads into another question. We often hear that all jobs really require a four-year degree, at least any successful career. Is this true?
I would definitely say no. I mean, only a fraction of jobs require a 4-year degree. Actually, that number's about 20%. You can get your foot in the door in the HVAC industry without a college degree. There are many people who work successfully in the HVAC industry who don't have any college under their belt. But not only don't they have a college degree, they also don't have the student loans that that go along with it. Uh, Howard, I'm 56. I'm still paying student loans, so you can absolutely get a good job in the HVAC industry without going to college. So I think a lot of guidance counselors say you need to go to college because they themselves went to college. They got 4-year degrees in English or literature or whatever they got their degrees in, and very likely they're still paying college, student loans. Students who go to college for HVAC and get a certificate or an associate's program after 2 years, they're out and about earning good money. So, you hear about this ongoing and this accumulating student debt, and the fact of the matter is it's not coming from HVAC people. People in the trades are out earning money. And in HVAC, a lot of people don't have 4-year degrees. If you're going to become an engineer, you're going to be a system designer, or if you're going to own a company, yeah, you know what? It would pay to have a business degree or an accounting degree or even a degree in math to help with all the calculations. But it's definitely not a requirement for entry into the industry. And like I said, I know many, many, many people who are very successful in HVAC who don't have a college degree.
That's great. Well, I think what we're really needing to do is change the words to you need post-secondary training. Because if you really look at it, if most people were to just go for a ride, there's a Walgreens, there's a dental office, look at the businesses, ask yourself what type of um, degree you would need to work there. The answer is in most cases, you need post-secondary technical training, which is a community college, a trade school, apprenticeship program. Military is going to provide that training. So that's great.
So, Howard, you just brought something up. You drive by and you even pass a dentist's office. All right. So in that dentist's office, there's one dentist, and that dentist has a college degree, but there might be three, four, five, six dental hygienists that work in that office with that dentist. Well, they don't have college degrees, but they've gotten post-secondary training to get certificates and other credentials to become a dental hygienist. So that's a perfect point, Howard.
I think there's so many careers that people don't realize require post-secondary technical training, pharmaceutical technician, dental hygienist. HVAC just falls into this large group. So Eugene, is there a website that maybe people looking for real factual information, not you and me, they could go find what people make, the growth of an industry, what's expected?
Well, yeah, actually, there's the Bureau of Labor Statistics, really, really easy website, bls.gov. And this agency, they compile data on over 700 occupations. They have a handbook. It's called the Occupational Outlook Handbook. And really, this document talks about industry and job growth. And it provides information on salaries and responsibilities and required education levels. And it does so on a state by state, city by city basis. So it's really easy to visit bls.gov and you could search for the different occupations and you could really get some objective information on what the outlook of your industry is. What is the outlook over the next 5, 10, 15 years in that industry? Is it growing? How is it growing with respect to other occupations? So it's a valuable resource. And I recommend when I speak to teachers and I speak to students, I always, direct them to the Occupational Outlook Handbook because it really does give, again, objective information on what the future of not only our industry but other industries looks like.
Well, To me, it seems like there was a great opportunity, as horrific as it's been, but COVID, when it was declared a pandemic, shouldn't there have been an opportunity to explain why HVAC was declared essential and enlighten people as to the size and scope of our industry beyond just residential technicians?
Yeah, Howard, that's a really, really sore point because the HVAC industry had such an opportunity to let the public know who we are, what we do. And, getting back to the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they track over 700 occupations. And when COVID hit, there were 17 occupations that were deemed essential, and HVAC was one of them. And we need to ask ourselves why. COVID was a great opportunity because when you turned on the news, you heard about hospitals with the negative pressure rooms that were required to prevent the spread of disease. You heard about the limits of vaccination production, storage, and transport because of the low temperature environments that needed to be created to store the virus, to store the vaccine, I'm sorry, and to transport the vaccinations. The we talk about the everybody went online. So everybody was meeting on Zoom and WebEx, all of these online platforms. And so we could hold our classes, have our meetings, and people don't realize that all of these business platforms, all of these conference platforms, all these meeting platforms, require really large computers to operate. And where are these computers? These computers and mainframes, they're all in data centers, in computer rooms. And these computer rooms need to be kept cool in order to work. Well, who maintains the equipment that keeps the computer rooms cool? It's all us. It's all HVAC. And during COVID, Howard, a lot of people got laid off. And they're often unskilled labor, unskilled people who got laid off. Well, it wasn't HVAC people who were getting laid off. These people that lost their jobs now said, wow, you know what? I want to get retrained. I want to learn something. I want to train for a job that if something as horrific as COVID happens again, I'm not going to lose my job. So we really had a golden opportunity to to let the population know who HVAC is, what we do, what we are, and why we are an integral part of your everyday being. Again, our industry, our work, if we do our work correctly, we're hidden. All of our work, all of our craftsmanship is hidden in walls, in attics, in basements. People don't see our work. If an air conditioning system is installed properly, you shouldn't hear it turn on, you shouldn't hear it turn off, you shouldn't have breezes and drafts, you shouldn't have temperature swings from one room to the next. So if we truly do our job correctly, nobody knows we're there.
So Eugene, this brings up an interesting question. You say that we missed the opportunity. I think it's still there. I think the industry is infinitely bigger and more in people than people understand. You and I walk in a grocery store, we don't just see groceries, we see more. We see this network of refrigeration equipment. How did the stuff get from the produce, farm, the meat packing plant, dairy? You walk into a hospital, you don't just see doctors and nurses, you're seeing these airborne infection isolation rooms, the data centers, refineries. Our industry is so much bigger than just the residential technicians that they may have met, oil refineries. And I guess the question comes down to whose job is it to really go out and tell people about the careers? Who should be out there recruiting?
You know, yeah, I think that's a blanket statement, Howard, because it's really everyone's responsibility. Whether you're working in the industry or if you're a school, you're trying to get people into your programs. If you're a contractor, so many contractors are saying, wow, I don't have enough people. I don't have enough technicians. But what are we really doing to get the word out that that our industry is open and has a lot of opportunities for people? So if we don't talk about our industry, and our industry or the work we do is hidden, then nobody's going to know about it. So the schools need to get the word out, the trade schools. But, there are so many high schools out there. I mean, Howard, there are close to 40,000 high schools around. The trade schools can't go out and visit all these schools. The contractors, should also be taking it upon themselves to visit the schools, to talk about HVAC as a viable opportunity and a viable career path. There are so many things that this industry has to offer. Again, you can earn good money. A lot of contractors are providing their techs with trucks, with benefits, with uniforms, with continuing and ongoing training. So it's really everybody who is a stakeholder in this industry really needs to get the word out and say, this is a trade. This is an industry that you need to get involved in.
But Eugene, let me ask you, so there's contractors, there's wholesalers, there's manufacturers, utilities, there's so many different entities. We're all trying to fix a piece of the puzzle. Is there a place where everyone can get together to discuss this locally that maybe will solve some of these problems?
Howard, definitely. There's a whole, the contractors are the people who are ultimately going to hire graduates from HVAC training programs. So the contractors need to get involved with the schools and help the schools get an influx of people from the population into their training programs. And it's important that the schools properly prepare their program completers to take a place in the industry. So industry needs to be able to get together with the schools to ensure that the schools are adequately and properly preparing their students for a place in the industry. So schools are required to run program advisory committee meetings. And it's the information that is gathered at these meetings that help mold, help transform, and help guide the programs. So the contractors, who are the ultimate consumers of the product, the graduates of the program, they need to let the schools know what industry needs, what they as contractors want their hires, their employees to know. So the schools, in an effort to get a significant and substantial population in their programs, they need to reach out to the public, and the contractors can assist with that. They can visit the schools, talk about the industry, talk about how the industry affects the local community in which the students and the contractors and these trade schools are located. Because our industry does vary from geographic location to geographic location, geographic location. So the school itself might know, and the teachers at the schools might not have their finger on the pulse of what's happening on a day-to-day basis in the industry, but the contractors do. So it's important for the contractors to be members and participate in these program advisory meetings, because at these meetings, administrators from the school are there as well. And they're hearing from industry. These are, again, from the contractors, who are the consumers of their program completers, what equipment, what training, what modifications might need to be made to the program to best produce a product, their graduate students, to meet the needs of the industry.
So it sounds like the program advisory committee is a great place for manufacturers, wholesalers, all industry stakeholders to discuss not just improving the program, but recruitment and how to collaborate on a lot of different issues.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah, Howard, the future of our industry is in the schools right now. They're in the trade schools now. You
So let
know,
me ask you a question on that though, Eugene. What can the industry stakeholders do? Because you mentioned there's almost 40,000 high schools. To go visit 40,000 high schools, these teachers can't do it. So what you're suggesting is that members of the program advisory committee can collectively go to different places to do recruitment for the HVAC industry.
absolutely, because if you have one, I mean, look at a school, Howard. Quite often there's one faculty member teaching the entire HVAC program, and they're responsible for teaching their students. They're responsible for changes to the program. They're responsible for ordering supplies and equipment. How can you expect somebody who's running an HVAC program, how can you expect that one individual to go out and visit 15, 20 schools? Whereas you have a lot of contractors. So one school is feeding students, graduates, to maybe a dozen contractors in the local area. Well, if each of those dozen contractors goes out, or if you're fortunate enough to be in a city where there's a manufacturer, an equipment manufacturer, they can go out and visit the schools. They can do open house events where they invite the public in to see what they do, just to get our industry to the forefront of the population.
That's great.
If we all,
What other ideas should we consider in promoting the industry we haven't discussed?
well, you know what, Howard, I'm gonna say it again because it's important that everybody in the HVAC industry talk about the HVAC industry. I mentioned it a couple times already. HVAC is the best kept secret in town. The work we do is hidden. And I think one thing that I want to mention, and we haven't discussed it yet, there's a big misconception that HVAC is for males. And if you look at a lot of the marketing literature that schools have and programs have, it it's mostly you know i- images of young males, and it's really really important that we recruit from all segments of our society, not just 50% of the population. Contractors are saying they don't have enough people. There are some schools that are hurting that don't have enrollment. There are some schools who really took the bull by the horn with COVID and say this is why you need to get into HVAC, and they have significant enrollments in their program. But I think it's detrimental to our well-being if we only market our industry to males. And you know, females that in this industry are doing remarkably well. They can do pretty much anything we can do as males. So I think it's really, really important that we get the word out. We talk about our industry. We let people know how great this industry is and how this industry really undermines and is the underlying factor for everything. If you take coated pills, for example, a vitamin or an aspirin, how did the coating get on that pill? Well, we rely on chiller equipment, low temperature air conditioning equipment, refrigeration equipment to actually coat the pills, right? Think about the coating on your M&Ms. Same thing. How does that coating get on the candy? So the pills we take, the foods, you mentioned the supermarkets. If I live in Nebraska, how do I get Maine lobster tails? Right? It's all refrigeration. You go to a florist and you see exotic flowers from all across the world. How do they get there? Refrigeration. So I challenge everybody to make a list and think about the things we do and things we rely on every day, and how refrigeration would affect that or prevent us from living in the manner that we all expect to. So we do need to get on our soapboxes and talk about this industry, and we need to recruit from all segments of society. Again, not just 50% of the population.
Well, Eugene, this has been great. I realize we could come up with 1,000 questions and we're not going
Absolutely.
to solve everything. But I hope this really helps some of the schools, guidance counselors, parents, everyone better understand the industry. And hopefully we can collectively come up with some great ideas on how to tell everyone what a great industry we're in.